hope to make it annual AAPI Climate Justice Town Hall. My name is Nabila Mansour. I'm the Executive Director of a group called Rise AAPI, and we have some wonderful organizations that are with us, especially our co-host that we're doing this with, which is Houston Air Alliance. It's been wonderful working with our friends over there. We have provided dinner, sandwiches, and we do have interpretation services available in Vietnamese, Korean, and Chinese. So if I could speak them, I would say them in those languages, but I can't, so we have people here. And please make your way to the front so that we can get you set up. So why are we doing this? Empowering Change, AAPI Climate Justice Town Hall. And I have to be honest, I am not someone who has been doing a lot of environmental work for a very long time. This is something that is new to me too, and it's something that's really interesting to me because I see what the next generation is facing, and I see what my kids are facing. I see what's important to them and what's moving them. And for us, I think what we need to do in order to make sure that our kids are invested in coming out to vote. As you'll notice, we are a voting center here at Chinese Community Center, so if you haven't voted, you can actually just go out there and quickly vote if you live in Harris County. But if we want our young people to vote, and we want our young people to be involved, we need to make sure that we're well versed on the issues that are important to them. And the environment is certainly on top of that. And environment affects all of us, especially our families. And as Asian Americans, we know how important family is. So it just makes sense that if we care about our families, we care about our kids, we also care about the environment. So that's why we kind of did this town hall. And we did it in two ways. We have one panel, they're going to give you kind of an overview of what the issues are that are facing our communities. And then we have a legislative panel, and they're going to tell us what it is on the state level that folks are doing in order to make sure that we are combating some of the issues that are facing us today. But before we get started, I wanted to invite a county judge in the county that I believe has the greatest AAPI population in the state of Texas, and that is Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County has the first Asian American county judge. I would say the first Asian American county judge ever in the state. Yes, I think so. I'm assuming so. I'm just gonna say it out there. And we're very proud of him for taking that role. And we wanted him to come and talk a little bit about what's happening in Fort Bend. And really welcome all of you to our first annual town hall, our AAPI Climate Justice Town Hall.
Thank you, Nabila. I really appreciate all the work you do. I know that you live in Fort Bend County, and thank you for all the that good introduction you gave it to me. And of course, more than AAPI, I tell you, when I got elected in 2018, I was the first person of any color in county's 182 years of history. I was the first person of color, any color, got elected to that position in Fort Bend County. And so we came a long way. Today, Fort Bend County is one of the most ethnically diverse county in the country, actually. 29% Caucasians, 24% Hispanics, 22.6% Asians, 22% African Americans. It's like a 25-25, you know. And we also, so many levels, we are doing well, but we have a lot of room for improvement. And this is a subject is very close to my heart because we owe it to our next generation to talk about this and make sure there is action. And so I tell you one more thing, and last 5 years, I wasn't able to take a vacation with the middle of COVID and all that stuff, and I traveled 3 weeks, and I tell you, I came back in November, beginning of December, came back, and I tell you again, this is the best place to be alive. United States is the best place to be alive. And this is the best place to have this conversation, much better than anywhere in the world. And I know we are in Texas, some of the stuff we are talking is maybe not popular in Texas. I get it. But you, me, together, we make this a popular conversation. And we owe it to our next generation. I just wanted to say, as Fort Bend County staff elected official, one of my most, as I mentioned also, the most diverse community, and I really understand the impact of climate change. And also, I'm glad AAPI community is coming together to talk about it. Many times we feel like that this whole stuff doesn't affect us, and it does. And one of the reasons why it is important to talk about climate change, because you all know that the extreme weather events, burden of pollution, and environmental degradation disproportionately affect people. But what I'm trying to say is that anytime there is a flooding happen, there is some kind of environmental disaster happen due to climate change, it affects economically disadvantaged people. Always, any kind of stuff happens. Even in the middle of COVID, it affected poor people, and poor means economically disadvantaged, I mean. So we have an opportunity to talk about, improving everybody's life, because that's the only way as a nation we can be proud of our nation. And we empower everybody and bring everybody together. And the leadership in this conversation by AAPI community, I wanted to commend you, and I will stand with you. And also, there's a lot of health disparities, and also there is a lot of respiratory illness and all those stuff. You are here in this room means you are so much interested and so much educated in this area, and I'm not going to get into the too much details. My staff gave me a note, and I'm going to put it on the side. I'm going to talk to you as a human being. And so I tell you this, Fort Bend County also home of one of the most per capita basis electric cars. And of course people could afford, and that's one thing. And we are in the process of putting together, charging stations throughout the county, and we are promoting so many levels what we can in the county. Around 200 buildings we are actually converting all into green lighting and all those stuff we are trying to do. And it is a challenging thing in Texas. That's where your conversation, our conversation, make all the difference in the world. And I'm standing in front of you, and we are also drawing for Navila's information. The census estimate for Fort Bend County for 2024 is 941,000. That means we are going to hit 1 million people by 2026. We only had 52,000 people in the 1970 census. So you can assume that growth and exponential growth. And so under my watch, my promise to you all that, you came here because you care about what is going on around us. I stand with you, and I am here to support and help anything we can do to combat this issue, and also creating this conversation. And also, a meeting is good, but we need to have, I hope we will walk away with some action plan. And that is the best way we are going to accomplish something. Walk away with some plan, and whenever we meet back, let's do some inventory, what we accomplished in that, and that walk away talking points or whatever your action plan was. So being said that, and I once again thank you. I see that people, I just wanted to commend Councilmember Cartry here, and he drove from Austin, and it's okay to clap. And I asked, oh, you're going to be staying here, right? He said, no, I'm leaving tonight. So look at it. Happen here, traffic. And when it comes to flooding, when it comes to flood waters, there is no zip code for it. We are not going to be ashamed. We did our part. And that's what that's the message I wanted to leave you with. Once again, thank you. Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you, County Judge KP George. So I wanted to thank, before we get on, we couldn't have done this on our own. I know Houston Airlines and myself from Rise API, we've been working on this for many months, but we had a lot of really great partners, and I wanted to thank them right now. You'll be meeting some of them in the panels as we go forward. But Engage Action, Indian American Impact, Bayou City Waterkeeper, Nackasack Action Plan Texas, Hope Clinic, Houston Climate Movement, Environmental Defense Fund, and PAVA, which is the Pakistani American Voters Association. So we could just give a round of applause to our co-sponsors. Next up, I wanted to invite someone who is a really dear friend to me and as well as to the AAPI community. He's actually in Austin and sits on City Council. City Council is very important when we're thinking about some of some of the things that we're working on, some of the environmental regulations. And we're very delighted to have him here. His name is Councilmember Zohaib Qadri. He's from District 9 over in Austin. He's newly elected, a little bit newly elected. Yeah, and we're very proud of him, and we've invited him here to do A, land acknowledgement, and B, talk a little bit about what's happening in Austin.
Oh, there you go. Does anyone make any noise? Well, good evening. My name is Councilmember Qadri. I came all the way from Austin. I know this is all about climate. I really wish we had light rail that would connect Austin to Houston, so I didn't have to drive back 3.5 hours, and it's also much better for the environment. My wife and I had a chance to go to Japan this past summer, and we just traveled the whole country by rail, which was amazing. But my name is Councilmember Qadri. I represent District 9 of the Austin City Council. For those of you who don't know what District 9 is, I always tell folks it's what you think of when you think of Austin. It's all the great parts of Austin. It's downtown, it's South Congress, it's Rainey Street, it's the University of Texas at Austin. It's all these great historic neighborhoods that surround the area. I got elected on January 6th of 2020, sorry, I took office on January 6th of 2023. So it's a good January 6th for me. But I am really humbled to be able to represent District 9. I'm the youngest member on the dais. I just turned 34 last week. And the district is not as diverse as Fort Bend County. The district's about 65% white, 15% AAPI, 15% Hispanic, and about 5% African American. Austin is the largest city in the state that is losing its black population, and that's a longer discussion on us failing in terms of the housing crisis that gets worse day by day, and that's something that we've been working on as an office, making sure we have equitable transit and really tackling issues like helping our unhoused neighbors and then public safety, but not necessarily in the terms of more cops on the ground, but investing in infrastructure. So I've a lot of work to do, but like I said, really humbled to have the opportunity to serve. I'm the second Asian on the dais in Austin, Texas. I think about 20 years ago, there was a lady named Jennifer Kim who I believe lives in Galveston now. So she was the first AAPI on the Austin City Council. So I just want to talk really quick about something that's been really passionate that our office has worked on and been a part of. I know there's similar fights in the Houston area, and then I'm going to read this land acknowledgement that I did not know I was reading until I got here. So I'm going to butcher a lot of the words, so I apologize for that in advance. But one big thing in Austin is there's a highway expansion that's taking place of I-35, which highway expansions are horrible. It's going to cause displacement of mainly black and brown folks. It's an environmental injustice in a lot of communities. It doesn't make the commute any faster. We've seen that with 45 here in Houston. It's just gonna add on more time, and it's just a mess. So myself and other council colleagues have been pushing back against 35 expansion. We've been having meetings with TxDOT to kind of get the best version of an ugly plan out there. Unfortunately, we only have so much power in our state government. If it's not preemption, it's just stuff that we can't really do as local elected officials, but we've been working with our colleagues in the State House and the State Senate who represent Austin to push back against expansion. It's something that the governor wants, and unfortunately it looks like it isn't going to happen, but we're trying to do our best. And we view that as an extreme climate risk and disaster to Austin and the greater Central Texas area. And I understand here in Houston there's been an I-45 fight, and I really do appreciate and admire those folks, whether you're in this room or there's folks elsewhere who have been fighting for that, fighting against that. It's just a mess, and I think it's so important. One thing that we've been doing is investing in public transit and different multimodal forms of transit, getting people outside of cars, and increasing, whether it be bike lanes, having increased sidewalks so folks can just walk around town, which District 9 is a great place to walk around. And then we have a light rail expansion, which right now isn't, I love the light rails, but it's not great, but we are expanding it, and actually on Saturday there's going to be a ribbon cutting where the rail will go all the way up until Q2 Stadium, which is right by the Domain, if anyone's familiar with that area. So we're making progress, but a lot of work to be done. I'm really thankful for Judge Brown, who's the county judge in Travis County, and Judge Peter Sakai, who's also AAPI, who's a county judge in Bear County, and they're looking to get some sort of rail between Austin and San Antonio, which I think would be fantastic. I am not a Spurs fan, but I go to San Antonio a bit for Spurs games. So with that, I'm just going to get to this land acknowledgement, and I'm going to read it from the paper. We gathered today for our AAPI Climate Town Hall in Houston, Texas, with a deep sense of respect and acknowledgement of the indigenous peoples who have stewarded this land through generations. We recognize the Karankawa, Kwawi Tikan, and the Atikapa-Ishak, there you go, peoples upon whose ancestral lands we now stand. We honor their deep connection to this region's land, water, and resources, elements that sustain our lives and underpin our discussions on climate action. In the spirit of collaboration and mutual respect, we commit to learning from their example and seek ways to incorporate indigenous wisdom and perspectives into our efforts to address climate change. As we deliberate on the future of our planet, let us also reflect on the ways in which we can support and uplift the rights and voices of indigenous communities, acknowledging their invaluable contributions to environmental stewardship and resilience. Today, as we unite from diverse backgrounds to tackle the challenges of climate change, let us also remember the importance of solidarity, understanding, and respect for all communities and the land that connects us all. May our discussions be guided by the principles of justice, equity, and a shared commitment to a sustainable future for generations to come. And before I give the mic back to Nabila, I lived in Houston for all of a year and a half. I went to grad school here, and it's always nice coming back here and seeing a lot of friendly, familiar faces. The food's also really great here. We don't have a lot of great brown food in Austin, so I'm very thankful for that. And also, I was in Houston when Hurricane Harvey happened, when Trump first got into office, and there was these detention facilities popping up around town. And I think what I saw among folks who are in this room and folks in the community was empathy, care for neighbors. I think that's something that I hold on to. I think it's, I've learned a lot from folks here, and it helped me when I ran for office, and I still carry it to this day. So thank y'all for putting me in a spot and speaking. I'm going to give it back to Nabila.
Hi everyone. Before I begin, if you were not able to grab a survey at the entrance, please do so. My colleagues will be also passing it out. If y'all want to just raise your hands. Did you grab a survey when you were checking in? That's fine. So take a moment for that. And then as well, we do have interpretation available in Chinese, in Vietnamese, and Korean. Please raise your hand, or, well, if your peer needs it, please let me know. We all know you came here for the food, but you will stay because you care for your community. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us in making history tonight at our very first AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islanders Climate Justice Town Hall. My name is Nhu Ngo. No, you can call me Crystal.
It's my honor to be your moderator for this groundbreaking 50-minute panel. I work at Air Alliance Houston. We advocate for clean air with communities because we believe that no matter where you work, live, or play, everyone has the right to breathe clean air. Growing up as the youngest of 5 in an immigrant family from Vietnam, I spent most of my life in Houston. It's only recently that I realized my deep-seated passion for protecting our environment is rooted in my Asian heritage. While we may not always use the same terminology or language, the values of environmental stewardship are ingrained within us. For example, can I have y'all raise your hand if you have plants at home? Solidarity, got that. My mom has countless, and a cabinet full of tea. But she's not calling it I'm being environmentally friendly, but she's still prioritizing our health with each leaf. And so are you. By the way, I'm really proud to share that my mom is here tonight. And thank you so much to our interpreters to make sure that we can have this multi-generational conversation. Drawing from our Asian heritage's ethos of community care, our esteemed panelists will dive into how our environment impacts health, why amplifying this topic is more important than ever before, and discuss actionable steps we can take to make a difference. Without further ado, let me introduce our panelists, and if I could have them raise your hands while I'll introduce you. Amithala Contractor. Amithala is a senior advisor for MDH Texas chapter, renowned for her dedication to empowering under-resourced communities through civic engagement. She spearheads initiatives to amplify Muslim voices and electoral participation and grassroots advocacy efforts, fostering community power and representation. She is also a United People Global Sustainability Leader. If I can give a round of applause for Amithala. We have Dr. Helen Scher. Dr. Scher, with Houston Climate Movement and Rise AAPI, is a visionary leader and life purpose coach with extensive experience in medicine, holistic health, and civic engagement. She has supported over 50 candidates, including President Biden, and played a pivotal role in breaking history records for Asian American representation in Houston area public offices. Dr. Grace T. Lewis. Dr. Grace, an environmental epidemiologist with the Environmental Defense Fund, specializes in assessing health impacts of air pollutants, particularly within environmental justice communities. Through her expertise in mapping and data-driven tools, she identifies and prioritizes risk factors, supporting community organizations in advocacy and environmental justice action plans, with a focus on improving air quality and public health in marine and transportation sectors. Usman Mahmood. Usman is a policy analyst at Bayou City Waterkeeper. He is renowned for his commitment to environmental advocacy and community empowerment. With extensive experience in research policy and community engagement, Usman has significantly contributed to initiatives promoting healthy watersheds and equitable access to resources, exemplified by his work with the Houston Food Bank's Community Assistance Program and Coastal Prairie Conservancy. So a quick round of applause again for all of our panelists today. A quick reminder to our panelists to speak at a moderate pace and loudly and clearly into the microphone for the benefit of our interpreters. And to our audience with interpretation equipment, please don't suffer in silence. If you have issues with your equipment, or if you see your neighbor having issues with your equipment, please let us know. as well, this is a community effort, so if you feel that we are speaking too fast, please go like this. This is to slow down. For our speakers to know they should slow down. This is going to support our interpreters. And if we are speaking at too low of a volume, please do this. Everybody do this. And that's going to let us, our speakers know to speak up. My first question is going to be directed at Dr. Grace, or Dr. Lewis. As Asian Americans, it's crucial for us to understand how environmental hazards directly impact our health and well-being. Could you elaborate on some specific environmental hazards or factors that disproportionately affect Asian American communities?
Can you guys hear me now? Yes. Great. Well, thank you for having me and for that question. I really appreciate that, and I think that history has shown us in the past with the first work on environmental justice from the United Christ Church report, as well as seminal work from Dr. Robert Bullard, the father of environmental justice, that we have had communities of color, both Black communities, brown communities, as well as Asian American communities who have been historically disproportionately having higher proportion of hazardous waste sites or living near hazardous waste sites in their communities. And that despite controlling for social economic status, that these racial inequities and exposures are continuing to persist. And in fact, there have been some historical studies. In 2017, there was a study showing that Asian Americans experienced substantially higher exposure to hazardous air pollutants. In 2021, there was a study by the US EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which showed that Asian Americans were 8% more likely to live in areas with the highest projected increase in childhood asthma rates, that would diagnose childhood asthma rates corresponding to a 2% increase in global warming. There have been others, other studies that have shown, for instance, after hurricanes, that Asians are particularly vulnerable. They were in New York, for instance, to flooding and deaths associated with flooding, as well as a variety of other heat and related impacts. But I think some of the work that I have done in creating a climate vulnerability index screening and mapping, environmental justice screening and mapping tool, has really shown that communities of color in particular are vulnerable to those baseline, they have a lot of baseline vulnerabilities and social determinants of health that really impact their risks. And so we know that Asians in particular have higher cancer rates in some specific types of cancers. And so we really need to be thoughtful about how do we make those connections between environment and health, because climate is exacerbating those risks. And what we do know is that climate is not discriminating. Everywhere across the United States, there is not a single place in the US, all 50 states in the District of Columbia, that is not climate vulnerable. And at the heart of that vulnerability is typically baseline vulnerabilities that tend to be amplified in addition. So we're looking at the intersection of environment, climate, and health, and that's what's putting our Asian communities at risk. But I will say that one of the biggest challenges in being able to really dissect and get at the root causes and drivers of how that impacts Asian American health is the fact that we typically are seen as a single monolithic group. And I think that is a real issue, and it does not allow us to really dig in to understand like how communities differ and what different exposures and health impacts and risk factors we need to really concentrate on. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that more, and I'll just stop for that for now.
Thank you so much for your insight, Dr. Grace, and I can really see that passion and why you've been continuing your giving back really while you are doing more research and making sure to stay connected to our roots. And so I want to point my next question to Dr. Schur, because you have very similar experiences too in public health and having continued to study in public health in the environment. How does being Asian American personally influence your perspective and approach, and really building off of what Dr. Grace was just mentioning?
Well, thank you for that question. In fact, I really want to thank our organizers as well as our co-sponsor organization that's in the way standing there. We actually put a lot of effort into this event, and I'm really glad all of you come tonight. It is a busy night. And especially, I'm very happy to see the young people. And give yourself a big applaud for yourself. And that is because we are working towards our future. Our future is for all of you, young people. Old people like me are going to die one day or the other. But we are working actually for all of you. My daughters are all in college, and they are passionate about environmental problems because of me, and always, pounding on them, how to protect the environment. And in terms of Asian American culture and heritage, and we don't have those big political words, like Crisco, we actually talked about before this event. We don't have a big word called environmental protection. We don't have a big word called sustainability. But our Asian culture is what? It's all about ecology, it's all about nature. Now, do you agree with that? Yes. And you have seen a second generation Asian American, whatever generation Asian American, do you see your parents grow vegetable at home, or cook healthy, or doing yoga or Tai Chi or whatever it is? Health and nature are part of our culture and part of our heritage. In fact, as part of the environmental movement, my work is focused on climate healing, and part of climate healing is really to deeply connect each one of us in our heart to our root. And where is our root? Anyone can point out to us where our root is? It's inside of us. Okay, the seed is inside of us. So without that seed, without that root, this is what we see around us. It's extreme destruction of our nature environment. So I'd like to invite you to really look deep inside of you, find that root called Asian American heritage, and how you can strengthen that connection, and how can you bring that connection to people around you. Because we have a lot of people who have no idea, where that root is. And thank you for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Schur. And so, with mentioning how critical it is right now that we are here because we need to know about the health impacts of Asian American communities, there has been a lot of overlooking our population because it's so ethnically diverse and culturally diverse. And so taking what Dr. Grace has said, and also that passionate comment that Dr. Schur just shared about how we are really connected, and all of us here today, although we are ethnically diverse, we are united in the way that our culture is. And so I'm going to ask this next question to Amatullah about how could you share some effective strategies or initiatives that strengthen community engagement, particularly advocating for issues like environmental justice and public health awareness?
So one thing that I think I personally have noticed, and maybe others have too, when it comes to climate action, climate justice, is that there are two ways to engage people. We typically scare them into action, or we can inspire them into action. And I find that what works best with our communities is inspiring them into action. So thinking of very tangible ways in which they can actually contribute to a sustainable culture, a sustainable movement, because our communities are very sustainable, and it's just about making sure that we take those give them very direct action items, even when it comes to engagement or little things that they can do in their home and in their community, we can show them what kind of a difference it makes. I'm part of a community called the Valley Borja community. We have what we call a collective kitchen and collective cooking policy. So all of our daily meals are made in one kitchen and then distributed across the city for all the community members. And in that way, we're reducing our carbon emission, right? We're instead of cooking in like 700, 800 households, everything is being cooked in one kitchen and then distributed for community members. And at the same time, it's promoting health, because the food is supposed to be healthy, that there's a specific standard that we set in the quality of food. And so there is a specific standard in which we can, set for the quality of food and make sure that we're kind of creating this culture of sharing best practices, of sharing initiatives and taking part, inviting our community to participate in being more healthy rather than just being like, you're gonna die because you don't do this, or this is, but rather than being like, this is how you can prevent, right, getting cancer, or prevent your community, from being infected, and just finding more ways to invite people into the fold and telling them that this is like a long-term vision, that if we all do our part and do this and this and this, that within the next 10 years we'll actually make like a significant impact in helping our communities achieve health and sustainability.
I really want to appreciate you for Amanda for mentioning that community care that we were talking about. So thank you so much for having those feeding and nourishing our bodies, so we have to be able to bond through eating as well. And so when you said actionable steps, I want to break it down to making sure that we have some concrete examples. And with Uzma, I'm going to ask this question to you because you have been doing community engagement for such a long time. And so with that as well, I want to ask you, what are some actionable steps that, to piggyback off of what Amthala was saying, and how do you see that intersection with the Asian communities, and how that has personally impacted your work?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here with all these lovely ladies. If I look out of place, it's because I wasn't supposed to be here. But very happy to fill in these steps and talk about the work that's happening at Bayou City Waterkeeper and the things that the other panelists have talked about. When it comes to climate justice, there's a lot of environmental issues that we can point out, but particularly when it comes to AAPI communities, we may not always be equating them to public health. And that, one of the biggest examples I can just mention is the issue with sanitary sewer overflows. As they mentioned, Asian Americans have faced disproportionate impacts along with Black communities, along with brown communities, and it highlights, it's always centralized in certain areas where you'll find these communities, but you won't find, you'll also find a lack of investments in infrastructure, in community engagement, in overall advocacy for those communities, because the engagement part, there's lots of historic systemic issues, but I think, when it comes to concrete examples, I think we should just take initiative in prioritizing investments for the same communities that lack those investments. It starts with meeting the communities where they're at, rather than pushing those top-down solutions. You're able to engage those communities really well if you come from the bottom up, if you try to meet them where they're at, and you can strategize, you can advocate for funding, whether it is for water infrastructure, whether it is for federal funds that can improve community centers, community initiatives. And so there's lots when it comes to investments, there's lots of opportunities and funding available, but it's just a matter of making sure that communities and our elected officials are pretty much on the same hand in hand, and making sure that's getting done and reaching the communities.
Thank you for the insight. And so I have so many more questions for y'all, but I am gonna go ahead and start taking questions from the crowd. So far, we have already started talking about air. Dr. Grace mentioned that when there's air pollution, it affects our children by 8%, right? Sorry, can you read that back one more time?
Yeah, excuse me. My statistic was that that with the change in a warming planet, that Asians in particular are 8% more likely to live in areas where we're going to have increases in childhood asthma. And I think that really points to, like just what Usman was saying, the place-based disparities that we're experiencing in communities of color, whether they be Black, brown, or Asian. And so I really think that that's a critical thing to recognize, is that we have to think about the sustainability and resilience of our communities and what types of things we need to organize and come together and demand to be able to have those resilient communities.
Thank you. So that's right. So we have just touched on air and the impacts that it's having on our communities. Now we talked about water and how there's sewage buildup, and then we just talked about food and the land. And so right now, although it sounds like we could be siloing this, but y'all, it's everything. It is literally our environment, and that's why it's really important that we are here tonight so that we can have this collective collaboration and dialogue. And from what all of our panelists have been saying so far, I did want to open up to see if there are any questions from the audience, because we want to have these fruitful conversations.
My name is Dr. Jalal Qureshi. I am, by profession, I am a professor of environmental science. I teach more than 12 years environmental science and work internationally on environment projects. I am really thankful to the organizer who organized this first symposium or seminar today. I am here. I just want that we just talk about the environment like a United Nations sustainable goal of environment. We think that this is the responsibility of the developing countries. As such as we have example of Harvey 2017 Houston, what happened? So there was the effect of biodiversity, ecosystem, wastewater management, waste and waste disposal, and a lot of other things. So environment is not very old subject. It's few years back it starts. But I think still there is a lot of things which we think that this is the responsibility of our government. But whereas individually, everybody have a responsibility. We have not up till here that we can educate to our community. No doubt, Dr. Sulaiman Lalani is here, our senator, and he is going to re-elect. I think he will give us some example that what he did for us. But again, as far as our, when I see like in a daily basis in our grocery stores, our dollar shops, what we are drinking the water is alkaline or acidic water we are providing in our schools to small children. The plastic bottle, which is very harmful, our air pollution, our road problems. So I think most of our people who are elect, they have not time to discuss about the environment. There are very few non-profit organizations. They are running their organization on donation, but there is a need of long-term goals. So that's my humble request that we have to help the non-developing organization and more work, or especially our mental tension, our roads, there's a big problem. Every day we drive, a lot of roads are broken, and similar in a city of Houston, there are a need of environmental separate sections, which provide the funding to the people in the public sector or the students for the education, for the research. That's my humble request. Thank you.
And so you gave a lot, and thank you for all the work that you do as well, and so making sure that we, communities are aware of this, because you just touched on a lot of topics. So I'm gonna go ahead and break it down and ask our panelists about so we'll start with the policy making that you were mentioning, and I'll just have our panelists. How can policymakers and advocacy groups better integrate AAPI perspectives into climate change and environmental justice policies? And I want to answer that question more because you were mentioning a lot of topics, and so I want to make sure that we are talking about the AAPI community too. And so I hope that y'all would be able to answer that question. How can we have policymakers? How can we suggest what policies can we suggest to our policymakers and advocacy groups to integrate AAPI perspectives?
I think when it comes to actually integrating AAPI perspectives in policy making, it's really it could be quite simple. Targeted outreach, and I can exemplify it with an event like this, where it's being held at a community center that is a resource hub for several community members that may or may not be comfortable with other areas or other, basically they find an area of comfort or resource. They find it as a hub that they can visit, and so elected officials and policymakers should just make sure that they have targeted outreach, that they're inclusive in their messaging, and I think let's see. Targeted outreach, and I think just overall, when it comes to actual rulemaking or policy making, just ensuring that whether it's a public input or public comment period, that you're able to actually bring out those community members and give them the resources and that accessibility to be able to voice their opinions and their ideas and thoughts.
I just want to emphasize one thing that you touched on, which is like language access, and really want to emphasize that. I think it's really, really important. I think a lot of our public officials are doing really good work, but sometimes it's just, it's not communicated, directly, or that, there isn't an avenue for AAPI communities to actually get involved. And so it's really important that we have language access, that you're actually communicating about the resources that are available, or like the opportunities for folks to get involved, to weigh in, to offer public comment, and actually get involved. I just think of like one community in particular, Gulfston, which is one of those neighborhoods in the greater. It's 17 degrees hotter than the rest of Houston, but there are a lot of really great things that are happening there, which I'm thankful or nice. But shout out Peace and Ford, they have a lot of community gardens there, and a lot of great ways that they actually have ways for people to engage. But then the next step is actually making sure that they're meeting people halfway and reaching them and letting them know that hey, this opportunity exists, and being able to communicate with people in their own language and share what opportunities there are in order to excite them and inspire them to come and join.
I definitely want to echo that sentiment about removing the language barriers. In particular, we see that has been a challenge for Hispanic communities who live right next to industrial facilities, and they're releasing things. that people don't really understand or know about, and that information is not accessible to them as our warnings, and the same thing is happening for Asian communities. If we think about the proportion of people in this community, in this city, we are one of the top 10 metropolitan cities with the largest Asian populations in the nation. And yet we have some severe language equity barriers in being able to access information. And so I think that is a critical component to being able to have some policy changes, but even to just understand what is happening in your community right now. I think from my perspective, one of the other critical components in creating policies that are meaningful to Asian American Pacific Islanders is that we as a group need to come together and raise our voices together. I am a firm believer in community-defined priorities and solutions. You know what's happening in your communities, and you need to stand up and tell your elected officials what you want. The other thing is that if you want to have policies that reflect what that are your values, you have to elect people who reflect your values. And so you want to see more people who look like you in public office. And so I think that is a really, really critical part of being able to enact and embrace policies that are going to reflect your values. And I think my other thing is to have transparent and equitable access to data. This is, to me, like, you have to make your point. And a lot of times people are not going to listen to you until you have the science and the data to back up what you're saying. And so it's critical for us to think about data that is a reflective of the Asian American Pacific Islander community, and how do we disaggregate that, but how do we make it meaningful to what we need to advocate for, whether that be health, environment, or climate.
I want to add to that. Again, I really want to applaud to the young people who show up. And the way you want to get your voice heard is to show up. Okay, so since 2018, we actually in Houston, for the first time in history, we right now have 12 Asian American elected officials, and some of them are actually standing on the back. They will be the next panelists to talk to you about that. In fact, I just did a Lunar New Year ads with Representative Wu, who's standing right there in the back, about how we can feature some of these Asian American elected officials and how we as the voters can help them to speak our voice, right? So to show up, to be at the table, and to ask our concerns and our cultural background, that's really, really important, just like the young people, what they're doing. And I mentioned about climate healing earlier on, and one aspect of climate healing is about this word called climate grief. And a lot of young people are feeling this, because look at news around about climate and the environment. Hardly there are any good news. Every day is about the earth is dying, the climate is heating up, what can we do? So we see a lot of negative news in the media, and that makes a huge amount of depression among younger generation. And many people feel like if there's nothing they can do, what I'm going to do, right? I'm just one person. There's nothing I can do. So I want to encourage all of you to look for the good news in the environment. We have actually colleagues focused on that. And I want to encourage everyone, that everyone has something to do with, and everyone can make a change. And if you want to know how, join all of our sponsor organizations. I'm representing Houston Climate Movement that actually started in 2017 after the first climate march. Thanks to President Trump, he inspired so many people to join the climate movement. We really have to give him credit for something. If not because of him, all of us would be sitting home and feel like that business is Euro, right? And the climate movement inspired the Houston Climate Movement. We're the organization which actually set up the first climate action plan with the city of Houston, with Harris County, and hopefully with Fort Bend, with all of surrounding counties. So there are a lot of climate action. You can be part of that, and you have plenty of choices you can do. And that's what I want to say.
When you look around the room as the audience, when y'all look around the room, I'll raise some hands as well. Is this the first kind of event you've ever been to? Raise some hands. Yeah, this is the first time where it's Asian, American, Pacific Islanders all in one room talking about climate. And what we should get away from our panelists today is that when you look at each other, there is already a built-in community, and it's not for a gloom and doom. You are here today because we already do have hope, and we are going to be encouraging each other and being involved politically as well to make sure that anybody in the office is going to be representative of us and our values. And like Dr. Grace was saying, we also need to be there. You are here right now and you are seen, but we also need to keep amplifying each other's voices. So pat yourself on the back. You are here today and making that and slowly making that change, and we really hope that you are going to share with your friends and continue to make sure that even within your organizations, you make language access possible. You're taking care of the people that are also in this work, so taking care of mental health that we mentioned, thinking about our future. And I want to ask our panelists a closing one actionable step that you want to recommend to individuals today moving forward.
Mine would be to vote.
Okay, I just want to echo that. Yes, but also if you're already voting, like take it to the next step. Go look into what bills are active. Go testify. And also, if you are an entrepreneur or like looking to get involved on an organizational level, there are a lot of grants available for you to actually. So look into your county government and your local government and see if there are grants available for you to have your own sustainable initiative.
I think I already mentioned join organizations and airlines there, and all of these organizations. Houston Climate Movement is the one I'm representing. Rise AAPI is to help Asian Americans to be empowered in politics. That's not an option, so there are plenty of choices for you to make.
I also want to echo voting. Take advantage of early voting while it's happening. We've got a historic amount of AAPI running for office in all different levels of positions, and it's wonderful to see the Chinese Community Center as one of the voting sites, making sure it's accessible as possible, and join a volunteer group, see how you can just try to give back and stand in solidarity with community groups.
If I can add one more thing, it's talk to your children. Your kids are those, ambassadors to their peers, but also to families across your neighborhoods.
When we talk about this environment, us being in community, and then bridging that in how this environment here is going to help us continue to bring awareness into our health. And I'm really hoping that we can just harness the power of our collective voices tonight to ignite that change, not just actually like the environment outside, but even in this environment and your involvement in making a difference. So thank you so much for our panelists. We can give them a round of applause. All right, thank you so much. If we could have our panelists take a seat, and we're going to get on to our next panel. Our next panel is going to be moderated by Sarah Sayed. She's with Knapsack Action Fund. And if I could have the panelists come up and take a seat, and we'll be getting started. We want to make sure that we are out of here by 8:14. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Are we feeling good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's get a feel for the room. By show of hands, how many people carpooled here today? Wow. Okay. By show of hands, it's okay. It's okay. By show of hands, how many people here have an electric car, like a Tesla? Okay. Okay. How many people here feel like they are contributing to like really good climate advocacy and engaging with electeds? Crickets. Okay. Okay, there's a few. Okay, I see you. My name is Sarah Sayed. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm here with the Nakasak Action Fund of Texas, which stands for the National Korean American Service and Education Consortium. I will serve as your moderator for the second half of this panel. As a reminder, they have interpretation happening live in Chinese, in Korean, and Vietnamese. If we go too fast for any reason, please use this sign to go slowly. Okay? Perfect, thank you. And if you feel like the volume should be increased, just do this. Excellent. We're grateful to have been in community with leaders from or within the Pan-Asian or people of Asian descent all across Houston. It's been a privilege to hear from Amatullah, from Dr. Helen Shi, Dr. Grace D. Lewis, Usman Mahmood, and their insight on community engagement, navigating the intersectionality of climate change, public health, and policy recommendations directly from our organizations leading this change right here in Houston and in Harris. So round of applause to our panel we just had. And now we're going to switch gears and move into our political panel with spicier questions. We're our elected officials here with us today. We are joined by Texas State Representative Suleiman Lalani of Texas House District 76. Texas State Representative Jean Wu of Texas State House District 137. And Harris County Commissioner Leslie Briones of Precinct 4. So much for joining us today. Let's begin by addressing the urgency of climate crisis and its intersection with social and economic justice. Each panelist represents a very high prevalence, or rather population, of Asians within their districts. Each panelist plays a critical role in shaping policies and decisions that impact all of our communities. This question is for all of you. Will you please share your perspective on why addressing climate justice is essential for our region, and what commitments you're making to prioritize this issue in your current role? This is a question for all of you. If you wanted to go first, Representative Lalani.
Okay, I would like you to pick this seat. Well, first of all, thank you for all the organizers for doing this. And also, I'm very pleasantly surprised to see a room full of people on a weekend. Frankly speaking, while driving, I was expecting probably 5 people will be sitting here. So it is so motivating and exciting to see that how much people are excited. And I think this excitement, we need to take it to our elected offices also. You know, you asked me what are we doing or what should we do? The question is if it's not now, then when? And then we are seeing so much drastic extremes of temperature, right? We are seeing droughts at one side and we are seeing flooding on the other side. You know, I sit on the Natural Resource Committee. We talked about water in Brazos River, right in the neck of Harvard, and erosion that is happening. And I was at the commissioner's office a few weeks back, and I was told there are probably more than 100 cracks that are coming up in that river. And you know, it goes through housing and residential places and whatnot, and we need to fix it. And in some of those, if it's just another opportunity of another disaster to happen. So I think we need to make sure that we focus our energies, we be more proactive rather than reactive, and to conserve and preserve the nature that we have.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Briones.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Zara, for moderating. Thank you to our last panel. It's an honor to be here with Representatives Lalani and Representative Wu, a dear friend. Before I first answer, I want to say thank you to you for spending your Thursday evening here. I know we're all speaking in an echo chamber because for you to be here at 8 p.m. on a Thursday means you're all in. It's about us making sure we're the multiplier effect in our communities. The multiplier effect in Harris County Precinct 4, which by the way we are in, and I'm so proud that the Chinese Community Center is in Precinct 4. I got sworn in here. We had an all team, 433 team members here on Friday. I want to thank the team members who are here on Thursday evening because they believe so deeply on this, in this work. My Chief of Staff, Alice Lee. Ruthie Natarajan, our Director of Special Events. Ann Sung is another one of our leaders in our organization. We have Ashley here. There's so many. Hien Pham. We have Najat Alasayed, Damian Rin, Tiffany Mai is here. We have from our Tracy G. How many of you have been to the Tracy G Community Center just down the road? We have Melissa Venegas, who's our manager there, Teresa Wynn. We have Jayla Fields and Deputy David Rivas. So all of these team members from Precinct 4 have joined us because they were so fired up about today. The bottom line is that in this role in Harris County to level set so that we're all on the same page is bigger than 26 states. Harris County, when you look at the FEMA National Risk Index, we're at the 99th percentile, which is awful in this instance, to be at the most risk for 18 different natural disasters, hurricanes, flooding, etc. We live in a precinct here in Harris County, Precinct 4, where we have River Oaks and we have Gulfton. So it was mentioned in the last panel. Gulfton is 17 degrees hotter. So when we think of the heat island effect, when we think of Western Harris County that is disproportionately affected by flooding, we have Addicks and Barker dams just down the road that are two of the 6 most dangerous dams in the United States of America. And we can go through every domain. We have the energy corridor. So it's these opportunities mixed with these deep complications. But I believe deeply in the both and, right? We can be the energy capital of the world and be a global leader in the energy transition. We can make sure we are doing right by everybody, but doubling down in the areas of greatest disparity. So I look forward to going into more details about the climate action plan that Harris County recently adopted last year and some of the initiatives that we're hoping to get the partnership of the federal and state government. So I'm happy to be here and I look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wu?
Thank you. I don't have any staff here because they're giving some money to our living staff. But it's great to see all of you here. And again, a lot of praise goes to you all for being here. This is obviously, I think, a really important issue for our community and for the freaking world that probably not nearly enough people are paying attention to it. For my community, again, we overlap a lot in our districts. I live in Gulfton, which is probably one of the most underserved areas in the entire city. And, you know, I don't want to put it this way, but like, for my people who are some of the poorest in the city, who are some of the, who have the least power, because not only are my people immigrants, are they poor, but a lot of them are undocumented as well, right? And so my issue, I don't even get to climate change, right? My issues around my district are environmental racism, right? Environmental justice issues, where people are forced to live next to machine shops that spew out chemicals every single day, when we have random fires that would knock out an entire, fires next door to an apartment complex that makes it unlivable. We have people who, you know, desperately try to find, like, you know, they're taking like 3 buses one way to get to work, and then taking 3 buses back, right? And some people, sometimes we say like, well, what's the big deal? At least they have a bus. I'm like, well, dude, when it takes somebody 2 hours to commute to work one way and 2 hours to come back, that's not cutting into their employer's time. That's cutting into their family's time. And some people, we don't think about that, but some of those things, when we talk about transportation, we talk about the environment, those have actual real effects on on working class people, right? Because that's 4 hours out of the day that this person doesn't see their kids and is not home to make sure that they do their homework, to make sure they're taken care of, that they spend quality time with them, and those things have a lasting impact, and it builds up over time, and we don't talk about those things enough. And so, you know, we don't even get to the question of electric cars in my district, in my neighborhood, because my people don't have cars, right? Because they couldn't even remotely afford one, even if it was available. So, personally, I'm very concerned about climate change, and especially its direct effects on flooding, direct effects on our climate. Maybe it's just my imagination. I didn't remember our winters being this sharply cold this often. Like, I remember, like, when, you know, a decade ago, it felt like, you know, we got kind of cold once every 5 years. And it might snow like once every like 7 or 8 or 10 years. And now it feels like it's cold, really, really cold every year. At the same time, it's really, really hot every year. Like, does anyone else see this? Like, is it just me? So, anyways, I'm glad we're having this conversation, and you know, my only disappointment is I feel like we should have had this conversation like 2 decades ago.
Make it 3. Think we had this conversation. That disaster relief efforts are inclusive and accessible, and what are you doing to ensure this for all residents, regardless of status?
So first of all, I want to thank all of the partner organizations in this room, because that is one of the ways we are able to help advance the ball in terms of equitable access. So thank you to everyone in this room. 2, language access is something we talked about. So when we took office a year and a couple months ago, we transformed our website into 9 languages, which I'm very proud of. We started deep community planning efforts. And by the way, speaking of our beloved Gulfton, I invite you this Saturday, we're having a Burnett Bayland planning session, another one in a stream of ones that we are doing. We're doing it in 6 languages on Saturday, we invite you. We are thinking first on the front end of our parks, green space. We're doing a planning effort to see where those gaps are, where we can add in additional green infrastructure by buying properties, because not only do we have the worst flooding, the worst heat island effect, but also we're the fastest growing. So it's the rapid development that we need to make sure is purposeful. So we're working on these master planning efforts to make sure everything is thoughtful and sustainability is front and center. Almost everybody we've hired in our infrastructure team has an Envision certification, which is very much focused on resiliency and sustainability. So every infrastructure project we do has that in mind. Additionally, at long last, and I'm so thankful the Texas General Land Office is at long last giving Harris County the money after Harvey. So I was super pregnant, about to give birth, thought I was gonna have my baby in the bathtub. She is my visual reminder of how long it's been since Harvey, 6.5 years. And thankfully, between our CDBG, MIT, and DR funds, we are getting, at long last, and we all know the whole novela that has been, at long last, we are getting those funds to put to work for a variety of flood mitigation dollars. Now, Harris County Commissioner's Court, as we were deciding the framework of prioritization, Social Vulnerability Index was one of the key criteria that we used in selecting the projects. Moreover, with our Precinct 4 monies, we put out a proactive call for partnership projects. And I'm very proud to say that SVI, Social Vulnerability Index, was one of the key criteria, as well as the sustainability impact, resiliency, and public safety. And again, multiple languages for everything we're doing. Also, we were very proud to support, and I thank the Biden administration, and speaking of voting, we all better vote like hell. Vote like hell.
Yeah.
Because we, thankfully, in this region, will have the $1 billion hydrogen hub, which the county was helpful in advocating for. Meanwhile, we put in a grant submission. So those of you with connections in DC, we need your partnership. for a $400 million grant for Solar for All, which will help those who are most vulnerable in our community with solar access for their homes. I can give many other examples. The bottom line is that we have just been doing infrastructure in large part in a very haphazard way. Bringing this SVI front and center and bringing this more holistic approach has been key. And so we invite you, this mic is a little funky, we invite you because we have plans going on in our East Katy area, thank you, which is the Katy, Chinatown area. We're doing a whole infrastructure planning effort there, around Bayland, around Burnett Bayland. In this area, we're about to launch a $20 million sidewalk program in Precinct 4. So our children who are walking to school, we need to prioritize them. So I need your partnership because everything we do, we're looking for volunteers to partner with our team. We have all these internship programs, so your friends, family, fellow students, we invite you to bring your bold ideas as part of our team. We're always hiring. And I could go on and on, but this is something of deep importance as a mom of 3 daughters. I'm like, we owe it to our kids and grandkids. And are we gonna wake up thinking, I wish I would have done X. I wish I would have had this meeting 30 years ago, right? But again, this is an echo chamber. If we don't walk out of here more fired up, putting it to work, what is this for? So with that, my dear friend Jean.
Actually, sorry. I'm going to thank you. Actually, I love that you expanded on that, and that actually beautifully ties into another question that I had for you before we move on to our other friends here. Can you speak a little bit more about the climate action plan that is put forth by Harris County Commissioners, and knowing that agents are disproportionately impacted by climate change? I think our community would love to know how this climate action plan is going to help vulnerable populations.
Yes. So last year, one of the first votes I took as your commissioner was to vote in favor of the Harris County Climate Action Plan. The truth is, it should have been done many years prior. It is a starting point. The goal of the Harris County Climate Action Plan is a 40% reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And this plan is primarily focused on the county assets because we have properties throughout the county, fleet throughout the county, and we are behind, to put it nicely. And so this is very an inward-focused policy, focusing on the fleet and facilities, and so we're making progress. Lisa Lynn is our Director of Sustainability. Many of you probably know her. If you don't know her and would like to meet with her, let us know. We've been working very closely. I was proud in the budget to add to her office, which was quite paltry, I must confess. So we're trying to expand that office. If any of you have an interest, we're looking for great people to really champion that work. So that's one way, as well as trying to get these Solar for All grants, helping to thankfully get this hydrogen hub, and working with the energy sector partners to try to incentivize responsible behavior that really helps keep us as competitive as possible as a region, but leading in the transition, not being stuck in the past.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Briones. I will now turn over to Representative Wu. Earlier we heard from Usman Mahmood, who talked about how there's not a lot of reinvestment into Asian communities, especially as it relates to infrastructure. One of the things he stressed was about the importance of advocating for funding. We also heard from Amatullah Contractor about inspiring one another, especially in Asian spaces, and getting excited about policy engagement, and inviting our community for more dialogue, especially at the local and state level. We happen to live and work in spaces that are a little cramped, and we tend to go together to spaces. We carpool. When I heard that Gulfton is 70 degrees hotter, I said, oh, yikes. Taking all of that into consideration, Representative Wu, when we talk about how in your district people have to take 3 buses, one way there, one way back, like round trip, that's 6 bus rides, right? I want to just focus a little bit on how the expansion of freeways can also have significant impacts on our communities, right? When it comes to neighborhoods, parks, commuting, right? Can you provide insight into legislative initiatives that you think our communities should prioritize to address transportation-related environmental justice concerns? An example I can give is the local resolution from the Ledge recently, 77 and 37, HJR 77 and SJR 37, which are joint resolutions that then broaden the scope of transportation funding, not just for roadways, but for things like public sidewalks, cycling, things of that nature. Could you expand on other forms of legislation that you think our communities should focus on and advocate for?
I'm gonna just back up just a little bit, because this is kind of like my rant that I've had for decades.
Let's go.
So I am not a proponent of us expanding further outwards. I think road 99 to Loop, right? The big loop, terrible, right? Because what is going to happen is, what happens when you build bigger roads? People move further out. What happens when people move further out? You'll need to build even bigger roads, right? And when we have this, our city is just, in the 30, 40 years I've been in Houston, our city just keeps going outwards and outwards. And what that means is, we're gonna need more cars. We're gonna need more freeways. We're gonna need more paved lots. And not only is that, one, just not good for the people my people have to ride a bus, but there's other people who sit in freeways, sit on I-10, right, for 2 or 3 hours every single day. That's not good. It's not good for them, it's not good for us, it's not good for anybody. But we keep expanding outwards, and we keep building these roads wider and wider. Like, how much wider do you need I-10 to be, right? Do we need, like, after 99, are we going to build an even bigger loop, right? And I think people say, oh, you're just a curmudgeon, you're a sourpuss, and but I'm like, look, these have a real effect. The Addicts Reservoir, right? All those houses in that floodplain, in that flood detention area, were not there 20 years ago, right? And we're saying, like, oh, why do we have flooding now? It's like, oh, because we built on the floodplain, and we put impermeable surfaces on the floodplain, and so all the water has to go somewhere. So I am a huge proponent of, hey, we need to start building up, not out, right? And I think we're starting to do that. We're starting to see more mid-rise apartment complexes. We're seeing more people move in the towers. That's great, but we need to do more. And this is where I think policy can come in. But more of this is policy from the city, right? How the city says, this is how we envision the future of our city. And I really wanted somebody, who was running for mayor to say, look, I envision Houston where we look more like a modern city, where we have towers, people live in tight communities, where there's amenities that are surrounding them, they have nice parks, and they can walk to the store, they can walk to the park, they can walk to all these places. You can't do that if your neighborhood is spread out over 3 acres, or like 300 acres, right? It's not gonna happen. Like, you're not gonna get those kind of communities if you have these wide, expansive neighborhoods. So, the honest answer is, you're not gonna get this out of the state. Ain't gonna happen. Not as long as Republicans are in charge. Sorry. Alright, that's just a firm reality. If you have one side that says climate change is not real, it's a hoax, they're not gonna go for stuff like this, and we've tried in the past, and those bills never see the light of day. But what we can control is, at least we can control our own city. Our city council is responsive, and let's put pressure on them to say, like, look, can we direct more funding to these things? Can we direct more funding? Can we find ways to encourage inward growth and not outward growth? And so, like I said at the beginning, I may have people who ride a bus for 3 hours a day. they're having to ride that bus to go to work because we're building the places of work. We're building the places, the business centers so far away. If we came in more, if there were more stuff structured around neighborhoods, they might not have to do that, right? We might all have to commute a lot less and spend more time with our families and spend less time on the road. Unless that's a bad thing for you, so.
Thank you, Representative Wu. I'm going to switch over to our third panelist. Dr. Helen Shi said earlier that first-generation Asians will always remind us that we don't have large words like sustainability in our languages, right? We in Texas are home to 160 languages and over 100 nations, right? 145 of which are in Houston-Harris County, and over 90 nations are within Houston-Harris County. She also said that a part of climate healing is deeply connecting with our roots and strengthen that connection to people. My question for you, Representative Lalani, is language barriers can hinder really effective emergency response, especially in diverse communities. What specific actions or policies do you think that the state can implement to enhance language access here and across the state for emergency response, ensuring equitable outcomes for all Texans, especially during crises?
I think diversity is our strength. It's only when we respect and make it included by design. And we have so many different communities, different cultures out there, and we just heard multiple languages that have been spoken here. That also means that many people do not speak or understand English very well or Spanish very well. So we need to have plans in different languages available. What good it is to have the resources if somebody is not able to access it or doesn't understand how to do it. So what I understand that our counties needs to have more diverse and more languages. Translation happens on the website. And I've been told if we have more than 1,000 people speaking a certain language, we must provide emergency plan in that language, because one life lost is one too many. And then we need to make sure that we are doing whatever good job we are doing. If it's in English, Spanish, those are two big languages, but we should also look for other languages that we can do. And I believe there's Mandarin out there, there's Hindi, there's Arabic, there's Telugu, there's Gujarati, a whole bunch that is out there. So we need to make sure that we have our emergency plans in multiple languages so people can access it, can understand it. Also, not only just to have it on the website, but also have seminars and education processes in multi-languages so people can get connected and understand and be better prepared for that problem. A couple of things that we did on the state side was, our TCEQ, and then they have sections that are in English. And there's so much disproportionate things that happen when it comes to our minorities, especially people who are more vulnerable are actually the one who gets more affected. And then they are in the neighborhoods that Representative Wu mentioned, the sort of industrial areas and whatnot. And if they want to complain or they have found something, how would they go and access to the website? So I was able to file a bill last cycle to include at least 5 major languages beside English and Spanish. That bill did not go anywhere. Okay? Just like Representative Wu said. But I'm still hopeful. I'm hopeful that if we keep on engaging, if we keep on asking, if we make our elected more accountable, and that's where the change will happen. So we have started, we have sowed the seed. I see so many people sitting here. I think let's get excited, let's get engaged, let's stay positive, because change will happen. And then that's as the NASA says, failure is not an option. So we need to keep on engaging until we get what we need.
Thank you, Representative Alani. I would like to leave room for questions for folks to ask, but we have one last question for all of our panelists this evening. As we're coming towards the end of this discussion, it's clear that addressing climate justice requires a lot of collaborative efforts from all levels of government, especially to keep pushing from down up, right? Each of you has shared valuable insights and commitments towards building a more equitable and sustainable future. One thing we wanted to ask is if you could name a specific priority that you're committed to furthering in the next year, and what are you hoping to have people here today take away, and what would you recommend to individuals to take from this conversation? If you want to go first, Representative Wu.
That's easy for me. Air quality. See the Air Alliance people back there?
Hey!
Air Alliance! Especially for low-income neighborhoods, especially for Latino communities, for African American communities. Air quality, because we're so used to it. We act like it's just normal, but like, you know, and by no means. I've been in Beijing, where like you can cut like air with a knife, right? We're not. I know it's not that, but it's still not good, right? And if you have looked at research, it says there's a lot of connected health issues, developmental issues, issues with children having lower intelligence because they're constantly in this environment where they're getting sick, where their body's being attacked by all these chemicals. One of the things I would like to see done is I want to see the city, and they can make like little $100 air test sampling kits that have a cell connection or have a Wi-Fi connection that you could just mount them in poles like all around the city, and we would have real-time tracking of air quality. And they would finally be able to see what we've always known, that in poor communities, the air quality is substantially worse than other parts of the cities. Anything outside of the arrow, right? And I want that change because I want to be able to, for those communities to finally see, say, look at this. Look at what you're breathing in. Look what your children are breathing in every single day. Whether they're awake, whether they're playing, or whether they're asleep, they're still breathing this toxic air, right? And it's worse. And because the source of it is right next door to your house, or next to your apartment, whatever it is. It's a small change, it's a small thing, I want to see that happen.
What are you hoping people take away from today's meeting today, Representative Wu?
I hope that one, I don't think I need to say that there's a need for action, but I think there's a lot of things that are attainable. And for me, like I've been in the legislature long enough where I'm kind of bummed out about it because, you know, we've talked about these things for a decade, as far as long as I've been there. And people mostly go, eh. But we don't have to rely on Austin. We can do things right here at home. And as much as climate change, environmental racism is a legislative problem, it's also a societal problem. When more people in our communities care about this, and they go tell their legislators, then we will see change. And so, but that requires all of us to go to our families and say, you don't have to accept this. You don't have to accept that you live in a bad neighborhood that has all this polluted air, that your water's not clean, that people dump toxic waste into your soil. You don't have to accept that. Let's go sue, right? Let's sue their brains out. Let's go and go protest them. Let's go like make their life a living hell.
Okay.
Right? Let's go do it. Like, we can go do these things.
Tell him, Representative Wu. Okay, same question for Commissioner Briones.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything Representative Wu said. At the end of the day, we know, and all of y'all have been on the fight. I think of a recent example, speaking of Sue the Hell and I say this with deep respect. These two are warriors at the state level. But at the end of the day, we need to double down on what we can do as Harris County, the city of Houston, and the other 33 cities. Meanwhile, we need to work like hell to flip Texas. But in the meantime, I know many of you are at the TCEQ fighting back with the concrete crushing plant whose permit was passed and allowed, it will be built right by one of our Harris Health hospitals. This is a hospital for the most vulnerable, who are already suffering tremendously, where the most vulnerable go to give birth. We were protesting, there is litigation, and guess what the state did? Still passed the permit. So we will have a concrete crushing, so we need the data, we need to advocate, we need to sue, but let's not be naive. We can still see these abysmal outcomes. So what we need to do is be as concentrated as possible, and that's why I love Rise AAPI. And I say that as a proud Latina who works in solidarity with the AAPI community, proud to represent this region, and Alice Lee, my right-hand person. All day, every day, we're thinking how we can coalesce our communities. Because if we don't show up and vote in the numbers we have to elect folks who represent our values, we can be fighting and fighting and fighting. But the most effective fight, and I say this as a lawyer and former judge, I love fighting in the courtroom, but the most effective fight is at the ballot box. And getting leaders who actually care about our communities and who don't just say it, but who will walk the walk when things are good, when things are bad, and when things are ugly. And I have the deepest respect for both of these gentlemen, and I've gotten to know Representative Wu very well, because when I was running for office, he stepped up. He helped me at the doors, raise money. We were block walking together, and it just takes that time. So I know, I'm sure everyone in this room has voted, but again, we're the multiplier effect. Make sure everybody you know has voted. Make sure you're at the phones, donating, knocking, because it's going to take time to flip Texas. But in the meantime, let's raise the score, raise the numbers in Harris County, because the urban centers are the way to get a Texas that's more just, and then I pray we keep President Biden, because otherwise all bets are off again.
Thank you, Commissioner Briones. And then Representative Lalani.
I should say I agree and I stop, right?
Well,
You know, when we started this session, we were so excited. We were elated with $34 billion in surplus. With billion dollars. We could have done so many good things. What this state should do, you know, healthcare, infrastructure, education, all of environment things. But what we did, we spent our time into noise-making issues which were more of a noisemaker and then didn't achieve a lot of things. So I would want to go back in the next session to ask for more funding. And then we make sure that we are more proactive about it. But I would also ask all of you that we want to be more engaged. You know, somebody had said that we should create an opportunity to influence the society that we live in. And how would we influence the society? By engaging. So I want you all to not only just be there, you know, you can work as what I call a charcoal story. You know, when we do barbecue and we lit the grill, some charcoal catches fire right away. What happens? There's some around. So what we do, we push it. And then other ones take fire, right? And then there are certain ones, what we need to do is to put a lighter fluid on to get the fire. You all are the charcoals that catches fire right away. You know of your friends who will need little nudging. Have you voted? Go out and vote, do that. And then there are some friends you know will be like, I will vote when I have time, I'm too busy. Those you need lighter fluid on. So make sure you work as that charcoal and you affect that. Learn to make the ask. Learn to have your elected accountable. So I want you to do is ask your elected and say, hey, Dr. Lalani filed that bill. Representative Wu filed that bill. I want you to say yes on it. Are you saying yes? They said no. Why are you saying no? And have those answers out. So that's how we will create that tsunami effect. So we will work on the funding side, we'll work on the legislative side of it, but we will have your support, so I think we can create that change together.
thank you so much, Representative Lalani. Well, we have a few minutes for maybe 1 to 2 questions. Make them spicy. I see Terry Chen right there. Question? Do you want a mic?
Sure, whatever.
Hi, thank y'all for being here today. My name is Terry Chen with Woody Juntos. My question for y'all is, Y'all have mentioned adding parks and children on sidewalks, growing upwards, being a modern city. I love all that, I agree with all that, but that doesn't change the car-centric grip that Houston, Harris County has. So what can we do to expand public transportation, make it accessible, make it safe, so that we can actually use it and we don't pass out of heat stroke because there are no covered bus stops, things like that. How can we prevent the expansion of highways and concrete? Thank you.
I mean, I think I kind of talked a little bit about that, is that like, it's got to be not only a governmental change, but a societal change of saying like, guys, we don't all need ranch-style houses. We don't, not every single person on this planet does not need their own yard and their own separate house. We can live in townhouse complexes. We can live in apartment complexes. We can live in high rises. We can live in all the places. It's just as nice. Especially if people are retired, they don't have their kids with them anymore. You don't need a 5,000 square foot house, right? And because the more we demand that, the more we need to build outwards, because we can only fit so many yards into a space. And part of the reason why we don't have better public transportation is because of that. Because we're so spread out, Metro says like we can't put bus lines on every single street. It's not possible. We don't have that many buses. We can't afford it. And so if we had more density, if we had better density, we could build communities that are centered around people being able to walk. And then if people are able to walk, if I could just walk to my grocery store, I sure as hell would. If I could just walk, and I do walk to my park, or take my bike. But if more people could do that, they would certainly drive less. And if we, and by the way, I know, just because you asked, Metro is doing a big plan inside Gulfton right now, and I'm really pushing them to start sooner rather than later, to put better bus stops, to put more trees in the median so it helps cool the place down, to put bus stops that are properly sheltered, that people waiting for it get the relief they need when it's 106 degrees outside.
Thank you. If I can add to that, I feel very passionately, so we're both pushing very much for the Metro Gulfton BRT, which I pray the new Metro chair and the new mayoral administration, I hope they continue. I'm actually meeting with the Metro chair tomorrow at 8 a.m. to continue advocating for that. Meanwhile, Precinct 4, because I feel so appalled by the heat island effect, how it affects Gulfton and surrounding areas, Precinct 4 is paying for 200 new bus shelters that will be focused on the cooling and the shading that our people deserve, because we have the highest ridership in Gulfton. Meanwhile, and again, I really hope that Metro will continue with the university BRT, which I think would be great if we're more thoughtful about transit-oriented development in a way that people can live, work, and play using transit. So I really hope the new Metro, Sanjay is an old and dear friend of mine. I thought he was amazing as chair and did what he could to advance. And I hope that Elizabeth Brock, who is the first Latina, I'm very optimistic. She used to ride Metro when she was growing up, and so I'm very optimistic that hopefully she will continue the progress that I hope we're on. And meanwhile, also Precinct 4, I'm very happy that thanks to, again, President Biden, we will be investing over $6 million in trees in the Gulfton, Leaf, Sharpstown area, just to increase, again, the cooling and the health of our residents who are trying to walk and get to the bus to get to work or walk to school.
Can I just throw one more thing? And I know I'm gonna get some hate for this, but please stop advocating for rail. Okay, rail is incredibly expensive. For every mile of rail we could put in 20 BRT lines. We could buy 1,000 more buses. It's exceptionally expensive. It doesn't really work in Houston, because what's the difference between a train on a track versus a bus on its wheels? It does the exact same thing. It's just, And so I would say because our issue with especially with Metro is money, and if we're spending money building a mile of rail, that's a lot of buses that we're not building, that we're not buying. Sorry.
Thank you so much. No, Representative Malani, we want to give you the same amount of time.
Same question?
Yeah.
I think, we can do things at an individual level. We can have our lifestyle changes and adopt good best practices, not wasting water, energy efficient appliances and whatnot. But at an institutional level, at the government level, we need to make sure that, growth is going to happen. Growth is there, so we can't stop it. But we need to be more creative about it, not to just build concrete jungles, but by design we should have green spaces. The retention ponds. Is my time up?
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll be.
Maybe that was a karma.
We are running a little late, but go for it.
Okay, what was my thought was after a long day? So yeah, retention ponds, green spaces. We need to make sure the water flow passage is there. We have seen when the one neighbor is there and then the new development comes, that there's a stagnant of water that is happening in the previous neighborhood, which was not flooding, started flooding. So we need to do better jobs on that, all of those parts. So I'm all for it. We need to be more proactive in this regard. We need to educate ourselves also, and also make sure that we force our elected officials to do a better job. Last cycle, when the flooding happened, a lot of people actually bought into houses which were in flood plan. They only bought it because the same builder was making a same plan, but it was 50 grand cheaper than the other one, not knowing that they were actually getting 2 streets down in a flood plan. So we need to make sure that the education happens at all the sites. We need to make sure that legislation happens, that it should be illegal to sell somebody without their knowledge what we are doing. So a lot of work to be done, but I'm hopeful that we will be there one day.
Thank you so much. I have one teeny tiny question left. I see Lupita.
Yeah, I mean, because everything is said so true and so important. And so every time that they bring a new topic, I think I'm so in sync with what you're saying, because I was a young, naive person when I went to college to do things to help the environment. And I'm an engineer. I thought I was going to design clean cars decades ago, and I found out that nobody was doing that back in the 80s. So I ended up studying air pollution. So I've been an academic studying air pollution and helping poor communities deal with that problem, because it is in our homes, it is in our places of work, it is in our neighborhoods. So it's everywhere where we are. So that's why we have all this, high risk that now we're facing. And now climate change is here. When I was saying 30 years ago, we had this discussion when I was a graduate student about what was coming. We talked about this. My PhD is in environmental engineering, but I was started as a mechanical engineer. So when I got to environmental, it was the pollution piece that I thought it was more important than following the energy piece, because I thought that was not going to necessarily help people. But now we're on the energy and climate change together. So 30 years plus, we're having these conversations finally. So I'm listening to you. And what I like to say for the young people is like, this conversation should have taken place, and it was taking place in very small places, hidden from the general public. So many of us have known for a long time that these floods were coming, that diseases were going to increase, the pandemics were going to have, and some of us have been studying, trying to prevent these things from happening, but don't necessarily hear from us. Some of the scientists of color that have been doing this work, we do not get airtime. We do not get support. We do not get validation for our work. So you need to be aware of this. That's why we need more people in sciences and engineering. So, but also in government. And so I'm here now. So I work with Lisa. I am the DOE Community Engagement Fellow paid by the Department of Energy to support the efforts from Harris County. So I've been an academic my entire life, but now I'm here working with the government to help, and like I said, as somebody who's been in energy and air pollution is my life, and I've done public health, I'm trying to just throw myself into wherever I'm needed, and hablo español, I love my people, and I do believe that there's a lot of power in our communities that is just have been dormant. So I appreciate the work that you do. I know those places are difficult, but my question is, how do we bring our communities together? So the Latinos, the Native Americans, I don't know what they are here, but we were in an event
for Black African Americans just a couple nights ago, and with the Asian Americans. Because at the end, I think if we all work together, that's when we really have power. So I would like to hear what you're doing now about that. Thank you, Lupita.
All right, I'll do it. Since we're in my district. Well, that's what so this is actually a question that we've been asking for a long time, right? And bringing people together is actually not even the main issue right now. The main issue is for communities to care. Like I said at the beginning, the people in my district, the people in our district, they're not in a economic place where they're thinking about climate change. They're thinking about how do I survive to next week. They're thinking about how do I feed my kids. They're thinking about, all the things just survival. The thing that we need to do is first to educate our own communities, to go and tell them, because I know within the Asian community, a lot of people say, well, the way I protect myself is by making money. If I make money and I'm successful, therefore I'll be shielded from racism, I'll be shielded from all the environmental problems.
You're not shielded.
And the message that we have to go to them is, no, baby, this is you live on a globe with everyone else. And just because your neighborhood may be slightly less air pollution, has slightly less air pollution than other places, you know what? Air pollution moves around. Alright? Climate change affects the whole planet. If you have to drive 3 hours, you still have to drive 3 hours. And all of those things still make a big difference. And so the key is that we have to go to our community and say, I know that your pocketbook is important to you, but we need to talk about your health. We need to talk about your life. We need to talk about your children, right? And you say, like, those things, maybe having money can protect you a little bit, but it can only protect so much. And after a while, when it's not 106 degrees outside anymore for the whole summer, and it's now 115, the sun doesn't care where you live, right? We gotta start, that's where we gotta start.
I think I would just add one line.
I didn't do it.
Oh. Believe me, I'm the first one to go out after all the study on the polls. Is to stop looking into our own silos and see we are working. Climate or pollution is not just one silo. We need to start looking at a bigger picture. Look at the pollution, how it affects the health crisis, how the respiratory illnesses and asthma happens in places. Okay, how does all those different things are happening. How the quality of health plays in economics and how the economy will play. So we need to start educating ourselves, is to start strategizing as a big picture that everything is included. And I agree with the representative who said, if one finger is affecting, the whole body affects, right? You feel the pain. It's not that just one side. So we are one humanity, we are one community, and we need to work for all. Thank you.
I know everyone's eager to go home. I agree with what they just said. I think it's multifaceted. One, in the teams, in our respective organizations, and I'm very proud of my Precinct 4 team. I think we have the most diverse government team I have ever seen, not just in Harris County, but in the state of Texas and internationally. But it's about all of us bring parts of the coalition together. Or Gene, when he reached out when I was a candidate, probably, in this David and Goliath match, he reached out because we had shared values, right? So it's up to us to challenge ourselves as a proud Latina. I see all these different Latino paths coming up, which is great, but then they don't want to work together. I'm like, por el amor de Dios. I'm like, we need to unite, and we may not agree on everything, but if we unite, we're unstoppable, especially in Harris County between the Black, Brown, Asian coalition. We're almost 70% of this place. So if we can get out of our own ways and then focus on these issues of environmental, economic, educational justice, and just focus on the work, rather than, let's nuance this. Like, we need to focus on the end goal and unite. And so I think it's in creating diverse coalitions within each of our organizations and then building those bridges, checking egos at the door, not fighting over funding and all this BS. It's like, no, what are we trying to achieve? And let's do it in unity.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. Before we leave, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague Amina to close us out.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this evening. I just wanted to make one note. They left a lot of good ideas on how we can help, and I hope you'll take that with you. And also just a reminder that the organizations that were involved in this was a C3 event, so we do not endorse anyone. So just wanted to put it out there, and that was not from us. All right, thank you for coming to our panel. Thank you for the announcement.